everybody. Can you hear me now? Okay. Welcome to the Joint Committee on Redistricting and Elections at Forsyth Tech. We are so glad to see all of you here. Thank you for being here. And we are here to hear from each of you. And we're going to start by recognizing our Sergeant at Arms, and thank you all for being here. These guys drove in from Raleigh today. John Enlow. He's from the Senate. And then the House Sergeant at Arms are David Layton. Thank you. And the General Assembly police officers are Officer Haley Rolagrande and Officer Thomas Rockford. Thank you all. Thank you all for being here and taking care of us today. And I'm going to introduce our panel of legislators that are here to hear all of your comments. My co-chair is Representative Sarah Stevens. And I'm Senator Joyce Kravick, by the way. I need to tell you that. I forgot. Representative Sarah Stevens, Senator Gladys Robinson, Representative Harry Warren, Representative Ashton Clemens, Senator Natasha Marcus, everybody. Senator Michael Garrett, Representative Pricey Harrington. Harrison. What did I say? Kathy. Pricey Harrison. Representative Evelyn Terry. Thank you all for joining me here tonight. We appreciate it. We have a lot of speakers lined up, and each speaker will be allowed 2 minutes. The Sergeant at Arms will keep the time, and they will let you know when your time is winding down and then when your time is up. And we have a lot of speakers, and we're looking forward to hearing from all of you. And we will probably have some more, maybe sign up tonight. But we're going to start with our list. And our first speaker, these are folks who signed up previously to tonight. And we're going to go through them first. We have Martha Schaefer. Martha Schaefer. There she is. And if each speaker will introduce themselves and if they represent an organization, just let us know what organization it might be.
Good afternoon. I'm Martha Schaefer, a North Carolina native and longtime resident of Guilford County. Can you hear me? Is this on? Can they turn it up a little bit? No. Turn it up. I'm a member of the League of Women Voters and a volunteer with High Point Electoral Reform. I ran for the North Carolina House in 2018, and although I live in Summerfield, I got to know many High Point residents because a section of the city was in the House district I ran in, even though I live far away at the other end of the county. Through these new High Point friends, I came to learn about problems they saw with the way the High Point legislative maps are drawn. Both the Senate and House maps gut the influence of Black voters in High Point. I bring today data and maps developed by Black and white citizens of High Point that delineate important communities of concern in High Point, whose voting power should be better preserved so its residents can achieve effective and fair representation. One way to preserve their voting power is to keep High Point whole in the larger congressional and Senate maps. That has not been the case in the past. For the smaller North Carolina House districts, each of these communities of concern shouldn't be split, nor should they be packed together. Approximately 70% of Black High Point residents, High Point registered voters, are in one House District 60. To me, that raises questions. High Point friends tell me that they think there should be 2 High Point-centric districts, which would offer them better, more focused representation. The current map only has 1 High Point-focused district. So please, don't slice and dice High Point. It has a history of being treated that way. I know my High Point friends would be here today expressing these concerns if their work schedules permitted it. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Schaefer. Ms. Schaefer, the Sergeant at Arms will be glad to take your exhibits if you'd like to, and we will certainly look at them and take them into consideration. Next speaker is Dimitria Carter.
Good afternoon. Can everybody hear me? Great. My name is Dimitria Carter. I live in High Point. I am a 2-year North Carolinian. I moved here in 2019 from the state of Maryland. So I am one of the thousands of reasons for redistricting. I thank and commend all of you for taking on this monumental endeavor. It is a thankless job, at the end of which you will either be heroes or villains. I read that you won't be using race in the construction of districts. I applaud that decision, but I am not so naive as to think that in trying to preserve communities, you won't also be preserving racial voting blocks. I am the great-granddaughter of a slave, but I am not a slave. I was born into a segregated society. I no longer live in a segregated society. I have witnessed many changes on racial attitudes and behaviors over a lot of years. I'm 70 years old. And some of it has been downright ugly and nasty. But a lot of what I have seen restores my faith in the ideals of this country. Men and women are created equal under God. I also believe in the ideal of one citizen, one vote, not in the fraudulent ideal of one non-citizen, many fraudulent votes. I pray that you do your job fairly, objectively, and well. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Carter. Next, we have Ann Morris. And after Ms. Morris is Joshua Fox Brown. So if you would be getting ready.
Good afternoon. My name is Ann Morris, and I'm a resident of Greensboro, having lived there a total of 28 years. I'm here as a private citizen, not representing any group. I'm a retired journalist, and I now stay busy volunteering in my community. I remember well when Greensboro was split into 2 congressional districts and how confusing it was. For example, I volunteer through my church with Church World Service resettling refugees. On several occasions, the volunteers wanted to meet with our congressional representative to express our views on policies that were affecting refugees. We had to reach out to both representatives because our group, all of whom were from Greensboro, had different representatives. This was very cumbersome and confusing. At my church in Greensboro, I helped to organize an offering of letters on hunger issues. And even within the same church, we had different representatives in Congress. People needed help knowing who their representative even was so they knew how to address their letter. It's essential to keep Greensboro together in one district. Also, I ask that you please keep Greensboro in the same district with High Point and Winston-Salem. We are urban areas that share much in common as part of the Piedmont Triad. All 3 cities are home to diverse populations, including large and growing refugee communities. All 3 cities face challenges with poverty and hunger insecurity. In fact, in 2020, the Greensboro High Point area was ranked 14th worst in the country in terms of food insecurity. Our economic futures are bound together as most large employers draw from all 3 workforces. Our airport serves as an important employment hub. Having one congressional representative gives the Piedmont Triad effective representation, so please keep us together in one district. Thank you very much for taking my comment.
Thank you, Ms. Morris. And after Joshua is Claire Stone, if she would be getting prepared.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Joshua Brown. Some of y'all up there actually know me as Fox as well. And for those who don't recognize me, I was part of a case on this very subject a few years ago as one of two voter plaintiffs who testified in front of a 3-judge panel talking about this. So there's a much longer version of my thoughts on the court record. But I want to speak today as now the leader of the Progressive Democrats of Guilford County and in many other roles. And as someone who has lived for over a decade now in my house on East Lexington Avenue, located in precinct H12 of High Point, North Carolina in Guilford County. During the time I've lived in my neighborhood, I've noticed that sometimes we are divided from our neighbors into different districts in ways that don't always make sense. For example, some neighbors just down the street from me, in either direction, are drawn into different state Senate districts than mine. I don't think that makes sense if you understand what defines our neighborhood culturally and geographically. When you look beyond precinct lines, I believe our neighborhood includes a lot of the area east of Main Street, west of the 5 Points area around the interchange with Interstate 74, south of East Chester Drive, and generally surrounding High Point University. And I say that because East Lexington Avenue is more a point of connection through this area of High Point rather than a line of division between us. So I ask that we look for ways to use a county border, city limit, a river, a major highway, or any other significant and recognizable natural or man-made lines or borders to define our districts whenever possible. And although we are happy that being a resident of any part of Guilford County now means we have the same congressional representative, some previous maps had divided parts of Guilford County, such as where I live, into combinations with other counties that don't always share the same concerns as people in my city, especially when placed into districts that are made up of mostly rural counties. So what I'm here to ask for are lines that keep neighbors together instead of dividing us unnecessarily. My hope is that one day, I'm out of time apparently, I'll offer my comments in writing. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Brown. Claire Stone. Is Claire Stone here? Claire apparently is not here. Kathy Wheeler. And after Kathy will be Wendell Showander.
My name is Kathy Wheeler, and I live in Guilford County in Summerfield. I moved to Guilford County in 1995, working downtown in Greensboro and retiring in 2010. While I reside in Summerfield, I engage in activities and interests in communities across my county, including Greensboro, Winston-Salem, and High Point. So I have a few concerns on them, as several others have also already expressed. I believe that High Point, Greensboro, and Winston-Salem should be kept together in the current congressional district. They share common problems and common characteristics, so much so that our area is known by one name, the Piedmont Triad. Our cities share many of the same problems: housing, food insecurity, transportation issues, to name a few. So it makes sense that the best way to address problems is collectively, with one representative who can focus on these issues for all of us. This has worked well and should continue. High Point residents shouldn't be split across NC Senate districts. When they are, the voices are overshadowed by those of the larger district they're put in. Again, keeping the communities together so a state senator can focus on solving the problems of that community for all its residents and not just some of them. It also makes sense to me that all of Summerfield should be put together in an NC House district with areas close to it that share the same issues related to schools, transportation, recreation, businesses. That way, all residents can have their concerns, again, addressed by a representative who can focus on those concerns and not have to pick and choose which part of the district he, she should focus on. Now, part of Summerfield is split off in a district with part of High Point, which has very different needs and concerns. Thank you for receiving my comments.
Thank you, Ms. Wheeler. And after Mr. Showander is Harold Eustach.
Good evening. My name is Wes Showander. I thank the panel for taking time to be here tonight. I myself came out because it's my understanding that there's some talk of the legislature delegating their authority and responsibility for drawing these districts to a committee. And I came out because I wanted to address that. We're talking about changing a major overhaul of our system, a system that's been in place for hundreds of years. I think we should be circumspect before we make such changes. Our current system has one benefit that no alternative has. The legislature is directly answerable to the people. If you assign this to a committee, there's just going to be one more layer between the decision makers and the people. I don't think there will be any direct accountability to the people. I also have concerns about the nature of the committee. Any statewide committee tends to become a creature of Raleigh. Right now, all parts of the state have representation in drawing these districts. The West, Clay County, Graham, Cherokee. Down east, the towns of Edgecombe, Tarboro, and Martin, they'll all be heard. I myself got redistricted just this last time, this last redistricting. At least I had a local representative who could communicate with me about it. I don't think members of the committee are going to communicate with the public as well as your staffs do. Right now, Western Forsyth County, Davie, Stokes, all over the state, Cherokee, they all have representation. I hope that you keep the system as it is and don't delegate or eschew your authority to a committee.
Thank you, Mr. Showander. Mr. Eustach. And Charles Talley will be next.
Good afternoon, panel. My name is Harold Eustach. I am the vice chairman of the Forsyth County Republican Party, and I'm the president of the Forsyth County Criminal Trial Lawyers Association. First, I think it's important to talk about how we got here. We got here where there was 100 years of Democrat rule between 1910 and 2010. 100. Now, that's the same state in which between 1980 and 2020, a Republican has won every single presidential election except for 2008, in which a Democrat won by 14,000 votes. And we got there because those districts were gerrymandered. So in 2010, Republicans won on districts that were written by Democrats. And now we've had millions and millions of dollars in lawsuits. But in the last year, we've had the courts rule and give us guidance on how to proceed. And I think what we're asking for is for this panel and the state legislature to proceed on what the court has asked. That would be not taking into account race, not taking into account a person's partisanship in drawing these districts. An independent commission, in quotations, won't be so independent. The North Carolina Constitution mandates that the state legislature, and the state legislature alone, the General Assembly, is responsible for drawing these districts, not an independent commission. This General Assembly is made by the voters. The voters vote for them to represent us and draw these districts. So we are asking that race not be taken into account, partisanship not be taken into account, that communities remain whole and counties remain whole as can be done, and we don't have an independent commission because we don't need one. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Eustach. Charles Talley. Charles Talley. Kevin Spate. Kevin Spate. Welcome. And next will be Linda Garu.
Thank you, members of the panel and assembled guests here today. Redistricting has become an expensive, disruptive pastime in North Carolina, frequently fueled by, Redistricting has become an expensive, disruptive pastime in North Carolina, most of the time fueled by lawsuits. This has disenfranchised and confused voters who frequently don't even know who represents them because of how many times they've been redistricted. There's been gerrymandering in the past. For many years, I was in Mel Watt's district, in the 12th district, which, if you looked it up in the dictionary, was the definition of gerrymandering. The legislature and General Assembly has put forward this year fair and direct rationale for the redistricting. It follows the most recently court-ordered redistricting process, which ignores both partisanship and race, and it keeps communities together geographically. That's what we should do, and we should quit suing each other about it.
Thank you, Mr. Spade. Also, I want to introduce my colleague, Senator Paul Lowe, has joined us late. So welcome, Senator Lowe. We're glad you're here.
Thank you for being here. My wife is recovering from a knee operation, so I'm so thankful for many of you that offered your prayers and thoughts. Thank you so much.
Ms. Garu, you're recognized.
Thank you. We're glad to be here in Forsyth County, where Senator Crawford can represent Senator Paul Lowe's district, and we wish Gladys, no, we don't wish, we wish Evelyn a happy birthday today. What a way to celebrate your birthday. We're so glad that you're having a birthday. It's a great day. Certainly the man before me mentioned the issue of spending money on court cases, and I believe in this year particularly, now that we've learned and we've realized how important it is that the legislature uses congressional and legislative districts, based on computer layout. This is something that hadn't happened until the last few years. I would urge you to think carefully as you begin and you work on drawing your districts. Also, keep in mind that we in the public are very well aware of the voter issues that are suppressing voters. It's not a really good sign. We read the paper every day how people don't have faith in their government. And we want to have faith in you as our North Carolina delegation. We want to know that we can depend on you to do the right thing. And I hope that you will, and thank you for the opportunity to speak today.
Thank you, Ms. Garu. Craig Schaub is next. And after Mr. Schaub is Willard Bass.
Thank you for being here this afternoon to listen to our concerns. My name is Rev Craig Schaub. I serve a church that hosts Precinct 704 just across the road from here. I live here in Winston-Salem in Precinct 705. I took a quick look at the data of my precinct. I came to find out that 34% of registered voters are unaffiliated. That means that more than a third of my neighbors care more about issues than about party. I've spent the last decade in our community working on nonpartisan issue campaigns, talking with my neighbors who hold a variety of perspectives, who are interested in facts, in solid arguments, and I dare say interested in the common good. Unfortunately, in some of the recent elections and maybe some legislative work, the common good feels like it gets overshadowed by appeals to this or that voter base. That's the climate we live in, but I believe some of it is also fueled by past redistricting. Stacking and packing districts that guarantee election outcomes regardless of facts and good arguments. So I appeal to your sense of common good for the sake of democracy in this state. That goes for this process as well. Provide virtual opportunities other than a comment form so people can be a part of this process right now. Give us opportunity to comment on the draft maps later this fall. Take communities of concern and contiguity as very high guides for districting. Put healthy public dialogue on the issues first before numbers of registered Democrats and Republicans. Hold fast to the vision of a common good. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Schaub. Willard Bass is next, and after Mr. Bass is Tara Blumquist.
Good afternoon. My name is Willard Bass. I am the director of the Institute for Dismantling Racism, a member of the Ministers' Conference of Winston-Salem and vicinity, and also the co-founder of the Justice Collective in Winston-Salem. I grew up in this state. I remember my first involvement with politics as a college student. I was appointed the job of going out to one of the local voting sites and inspecting the ballot box. And I remember I was going out into the county, and I walked up in there, and there's a lot of folks that didn't look like me, and I just had to have the courage to go up there and say, I'm here as a representative of this democracy, and I want to see the ballot box. And they allowed me to see the ballot box. And so I remember that as a way our democracy works. And I come here today to say to you that we must have a transparent and a fair redistricting. Our nation is in a state now where it could go either way, if you will, but we have to be certain that we do the right thing. And so I am asking you all, as the leaders, if you will, of this government, to work hard to represent your districts, but also to make sure we, as citizens, as people of North Carolina, have the opportunity to vote for people that we want to vote for, and have the opportunity to put people in office that would work on the issues that are important to us. Our nation is in a turmoil right now. You can make the difference. You and your decisions can make a difference. Our nation needs you, our state needs you, and our cities need you. Thank you, and do the right thing.
Thank you, Mr. Bass. Tara Blumquist and Ron Moxley will follow Ms. Blumquist.
My name is Tara Blumquist. I've been a resident of High Point for many years and have been shuffled around in voting districts until I'm hardly sure who represents me. I've worked in High Point at the showrooms painting murals as a freelancer, and it's been hard to see the city struggling since the outsourcing of furniture manufacturers to cheap overseas sources. Jobs are not as plentiful nor lucrative as they once were, and an increase in the minimum wage would go a long way in easing some of that pain. Because High Point voters have been grouped together with Randolph County voters, the people of this city have had their voices diluted. We need to keep this city whole as a Senate district so we can elect someone who will have consideration for those whose voices have been ignored for too long. This is an opportunity to right a wrong. Thank you for taking my comment.
Thank you, Ms. Blumquist. Ron Moxley. And after Mr. Moxley will be Judy Durr.
Thank you for holding these hearings. I hope that you'll hold more after we hear the figures that come out. I want to concur with a lot of what's been said earlier. I should say I'm from High Point. Have lived there for half my life now. I can hardly believe it, but it's true. So a lot of the things have focused on the joint problems of all of these three towns, High Point, Winston-Salem, and Greensboro. And I concur with that, whether it's hunger, law enforcement issues, crime, social issues, we all share them. And one thing, it's mostly possible, even for the congressional seat to occupy or to take into account all of these three cities, the majority of the population. In other words, things are better when urban areas can be all kept together. Otherwise, I want to say that I'm really a supporter of a nonpartisan commission. And the reason for that is that way, in the end, voters choose representatives and not representatives choosing voters. We all know what gerrymandering is. I didn't look it up this time around, but I'm sure some guy named Jerry was involved, and that it has to do with the shape of things, right? So at this time, we really, I lived through an era when there was one-party government and there was corruption. I've been alive long enough to know that. In the past 10 years, it's been another party, and not that there's been corruption, as much as there's just been the abuse of power that comes when you're in charge. So I have to say, I don't think the legislators can do this in the fairest way, but give it a shot, because your job is to help all of us to have democracy become better. That's all we can ask. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Moxley. Judy Durr. And following Ms. Durr is Sandra Robinson.
Hello, my name is Judy Durr. I live in Moxville in Davie County. I'm here today to ask the Redistricting Committee to consider 3 items. Number 1, when the congressional and legislative districts are redrawn, please don't split up communities. That is to say, as much as is possible, don't split cities into 2 separate districts or smaller counties into 2 districts. People that have chosen to live together in one place should be able to vote together for the same representative. Number 2, I'd like to see proportional representation in North Carolina. We are a purple state, therefore our representation should be roughly 50-50 between the 2 major parties. New redistricting should reflect this. And number 3, please consider the need for 1 more meeting after you tentatively redraw the new districts. Currently, there's only 1 meeting scheduled in Raleigh for this discussion. More are needed throughout the state so that you can better understand the thoughts and needs of your constituents. Thank you. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Ms. Durr. Sandra Robinson. And after Ms. Robinson is Stephen Boyd.
First of all, thank you for being here and doing the redistricting work for all of North Carolina's citizens. I'm Sandra Robinson, here with All on the Line, and I live in King, North Carolina. I'm concerned about the redistricting of our state to unfairly advantage one political party. One of the founding principles of our country was liberty. Favoring one party over another in a district ensures one party's candidate always wins in those districts. On the other side of that coin, the freedom of the other party's voters to know that their vote counts is stripped away. Statistically speaking, the party gerrymandered out of that district's voting population will not win. This is disenfranchisement of all the voters whose party was gerrymandered out of that district. Their votes essentially do not count. Fairness is what compelled me to speak here today. If we look at the 2020 election in North Carolina, the two races that the entire state voted in, the presidential race and the race for governor, we basically see a purple state. Donald Trump received 74,000 more votes than Joe Biden, or 1.4% of the total votes cast. Roy Cooper received approximately 248,000 more votes than his competitor, or less than 5% more than Dan Forrest. If I were an outside observer with no other data than the above about the state, I would come to the conclusion North Carolina is fairly equally split between Democratic and Republican parties. However, when drilling down a bit further to the U.S. House, NC Senate, North Carolina House, and come up maps, they're pretty much red. Redistricting with each census offers us the opportunity every 10 years to draw district lines based on population changes. When either party tries to take advantage of this to redistrict to ensure their candidate will win, we all lose. The best, most recent evidence of this was in 2010 when the Republican Party, via Red Map, or Redistricting Majority Project, worked to solicit donations to help ensure North Carolina, Florida, and other legislatures were controlled by Republicans. This allowed Republicans to redistrict those states so that even though the Democrats won the White House and the Senate in 2012 and had a 1.4 million vote majority for House candidates, they walked away from the election as the minority party in the House with 33 seats less than the Republicans. We have amended the Constitution to protect the rights of minorities and women and to ensure their right to vote, yet we have not turned into a socialist state, the rallying cry of those who are afraid of each and every vote counting. We are a pluralistic, diverse society, and it's high time we act like it and redistrict fairly to ensure that every vote counts.
Thank you, Ms. Robinson and Stephen Boyd. And Our Representative Amber Baker from here in Winston-Salem has joined us, so welcome, Representative Baker. We're glad you're here. Mr. Boyd, and following Mr. Boyd will be Bronnie Vanderwerker.
My name is Stephen Boyd. I'm here on behalf of the Justice Team of the Parkway United Church of Christ, which is across the street. We're a faith community of people who live all around Forsyth County. We're active in community volunteering in various not-for-profits throughout the county, and we're intentional about reflecting what our faith has to do with the issues of the day. Currently, our membership is divided between two U.S. House of Representative districts, so it's difficult for us to work together in speaking to our congressional representation. We urge you to keep Forsyth County together when it comes to dividing up our state into now 14 congressional districts. We are very disappointed in some of the criteria the General Assembly so quickly voted on in August. We feel the addresses of current legislators should not be taken into consideration. Data on race should be used as we continue to live under provisions of the Voting Rights Act. And finally, the voices of people in the community and their concerns should also take precedence. We expect to have more opportunity for public discussion after the draft maps are released. Please give enough time in the process for broad participation by the people of North Carolina in this decision, including language options and virtual participation options. We urge fairness, openness, and timeliness in this redistricting process. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Mr. Boyd. Bronnie Vanderwerker. And following Ms. Vanderwerker is Tina Forsberg.
I'm here today from Summerfield, and I could just say ditto to a lot of what I've just heard and save you a lot of time, but in keeping with repetition that I'm sure you were expecting today, I'll go ahead and tell you my opinion. I'm here today as a private citizen and a taxpayer. I did a little bit of research on redistricting, and I've learned that it's been a point of contention for many years. A lot of fighting, resulting in partisan name-calling and legal challenges that has cost taxpayers millions of dollars. As a taxpayer, that makes me mad. Our legislators have been transparent in the process as I have read it, and it appears to me that the criteria that they're going to use for the 2021 redistricting will be fair and balanced, with only minor exceptions. I hope that is the case. I would like for the name-calling to stop and the fighting and get on with the redistricting. I have full confidence in our legislators to carry out this job fairly, and it is my hope that they will be able to do so without further costly challenges to the taxpayers.
Thank you, Ms. Vanderwerker. Tina Forsberg, and following Ms. Forsberg will be Annschlomer.
Thank you so much for coming out to listen to us. I, too, echo, and for people who don't know me, my name's Tina Forsberg. I live in Greensboro. And 15 years ago, a small infant boy was dropped into my hands, my first grandson, and that was my political awakening. And when I started my volunteer career as a Republican volunteer, and I stand here today as the chairwoman of the 6th District. We are standing here in a district that is Democrat plus 18 points, and yet I'm still here. I'm still working on it, and I appreciate everyone coming out to talk to us. I do think that our process is just fine right now. I think that you guys you've got the ability to look at the computer and know where people live. Somebody who said they think it needs to be a nonpartisan board. There really aren't any partisans, any nonpartisans, as other people have said, because we're all working around issues that are important to us. So if you look at the Democrat platform and the Republican platform, you'll see issues, and people kind of tend to go one way or the other. So I do hope you'll look at those statistics. I know you're going to come up with a fair process. It's apparent you all have a good working relationship, and I appreciate that. I will make one last pitch since I got the 1-minute mark for my own personal Don Quixote cause, and that is I don't think there should be any such thing as a D plus 18 or an R plus 20. I think we need to have competitive districts. I think competitive districts will result in responsive elected officials, responsive staff of those elected officials. I also believe it'll result in better voter turnout and people really thinking that their vote can make a difference. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Forsberg. Annschlomer, and following Aaron will be Jabbar.
Hi, I am from High Point, and I have a very simple message. All elected officials, from president to local office, should take an afternoon to read and highlight their individual roles defined in the U.S. Constitution and the North Carolina Constitution. America is unique because we are a country ruled by laws, not men. The citizens across the political spectrum, right to left, are all becoming well-versed in their rights. We know when the Constitution is being followed, and we will not accept it when it is not. North Carolina General Assembly was elected to redistrict. Stop wasting time and our tax dollars suing over this decision. Let's move forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Jabbar, and following Mr. Jabbar will be Robert Frederick.
Good afternoon. My name is Waidu Jabbar. I am the president of Forsyth County NAACP. There are a couple of things I would like to share with you today. One, districts must be drawn that are compact. The current map in Forsyth and Guilford are not. Non-compact districts confuse voters, split communities of interest, and are often drawn to benefit certain voters or certain political parties. Districts must be drawn that do not split precincts. Split precincts confuse voters, make it harder to administer elections, and often used to benefit certain incumbents or certain political parties. City and town should not be divided unnecessarily to protect incumbents or a particular political party. Legislators should consider communities of interest and not divide them to protect incumbents or political groups. African American voters shall not be packed into a few districts through racial gerrymandering to diminish their voices. Democratic voters should not be packed into a few districts through the partisan gerrymandering to diminish their votes. When we fight, we win.
Thank you, Mr. Jabbar. Robert Frederick is next, and following Mr. Frederick is Beverly McFadden.
Thank you, and good afternoon. My name is Robert Frederick, and I live in Jamestown, North Carolina. Named after a Quaker, not a king. That's the one in Virginia. Our community of 4,000 people is nestled between High Point and Greensboro. It shares borders with both. Until Jamestown's mill shut down just over a decade ago, it was the oldest continually operating cotton mill in the United States. The shutdown of the mill was pretty tough on our community, and Jamestown still has some empty storefronts on Main Street, but there aren't any empty houses. That's because a lot of people who work in High Point and Greensboro now live in Jamestown. That includes our family. We moved to Jamestown from High Point. We work, play, and pray in Jamestown, High Point, and Greensboro. Over the past decade, however, political maps have split our communities up. For example, right now, Jamestown, and a part of South High Point, is in a North Carolina Senate district, District 26, with all of Randolph County. We don't work, play, or pray in Randolph County. We live in Guilford County. We're not even close to the border. And because of gerrymandering over the past decade, both racial and partisan gerrymandering that was ruled to be illegal, our maps, and therefore our representation, kept changing. That makes it difficult to advocate for our community's needs. Jamestown should be kept whole and together with the communities we work, play, and pray in, Greensboro and High Point. And maps need to be fair so they don't keep getting repeatedly thrown out and redrawn for being illegal. Thank you for your attention and for your consideration.
Thank you, Mr. Frederick. Beverly McFadden, and following Ms. McFadden is Frederick Terry.
My name is Beverly Bernice McFadden from Precinct 403. It is time to take political fear off the table. My question to all of you, why are some politicians afraid to position themselves within the arms of rightness? I am standing here making this simple request. Trickery and deception should not come into play, but fairness and equity should be in place. Place the power of the people squarely on their shoulders by allowing the maps to be drawn without smoke and mirrors. It is time to do what is right for all. Allow me to quote Webster's dictionary concerning equity. It states justice according to the natural law of right, specifically freedom from bias and favoritism, end quote. Don't allow this process to have the appearance of rightness. When our political system operates within clarity and honesty, we all are winners.
Thank you, Ms. McFadden. Frederick Terry, and following Mr. Terry is Pat Blackburn.
Good afternoon. Again, my name is Fred Terry. Live here in Forsyth County, representing Precinct 501. And I would be remiss if I didn't publicly wish my bride happy birthday. Redistricting. I stand before you today having come to North Carolina from a small town in New York back in the 60s. I began work in politics, working for Representative Fry when he was first elected back in 1968. I've seen gerrymandering and all these other formations of Forsyth County and Winston-Salem over the years. Some good, some not so good. This is the second time that Winston-Salem was in one district. First time, we've never had Forsyth County in one district by itself. Redistricting is important. Gerrymandering for power is not a good thing for democracy. I ask you to consider fairness and equity in redistricting. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Terry. Pat Blackburn. And following Pat Blackburn will be Chanel James.
Hello, my name's Pat Blackburn. Thank you for the opportunity to address you today. I am a constituent here in Forsyth County. You know, I pay my taxes, and it really bothers me when we sue each other, and the only people who really win are the lawyers. Sorry, Harold. So, you know, partisans and special interest groups, we're still fighting. And I've been watching your committee hearings, and it seems like a precursor for more litigation, and that bothers me. We found a litmus for criteria for making maps. That was when the court ruled in 2019. And the rules should be, don't use past election results, don't use party registration, don't use data on race, and then it also seems that the voters would like us to keep the counties as whole as possible. Sounds simple. But then we have this new wrinkle thrown into the matrix, and that's the wrinkle of communities of concern or communities of interest. I got a problem with that. You see, interest concentrated in one area, why should that interest have more political clout than interests of the entire state? And then another question, is it the state's job to protect interest? You know, communities of interest, that criteria is a little fuzzy to me. Which communities are you going to protect? We as voters are individuals, and we all have different interests. And not all of us vote one party or the other. And not all of us are single interest voters. We have many interests. So this idea of community interest seems like something that you were trying to avoid in all that litigation about gerrymandering. So if you want to draw a fair map, use the rules that you have that worked in 2019 and stop wasting our taxpayer dollars. Stop the lawsuits. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Blackburn. Chanel James is next, and following Ms. James will be Linda Dark.
Good evening. I am happy to be here to speak for my community. I am from Guilford County, North Carolina. I rolled out of the hills of Western North Carolina 25 years ago, and I have not left. And I want to speak to two important issues. If you don't want lawsuits about districts in North Carolina, then you should include people in the conversation about districts in North Carolina. Because when people consider their districts, they are fighting for their lives. And when I was a part of a lawsuit in the state of North Carolina, I was fighting for my life. I was fighting for justice. I was fighting for against food deserts and what we could do about that. I was fighting for living wages in North Carolina. So I'm going to use everything I can to make sure my districts reflect what people need. Because let me get it straight for you, everybody votes and chooses based on their interests. So I ask that you look at your criteria. Look at community of interest, and please understand that a consideration for race is not the same thing as racism. We've got to get that clear. I am asking you to look at two things. One, how can we get more people to participate in these hearings? I can't talk to you really about these maps because we haven't seen them yet. So I'm asking, how can you start to hear more of the voices of people who you say you represent? Where are these additional meetings going to be? How are we going to get to you so that we can talk to you and tell you what's in our best interest? And then the next thing I'm going to say is thank you.
Thank you, Ms. James. Linda Dark is next, and following Ms. Dark is Lee Sudbrink.
My name is Linda Dark. I'm a native of Forsyth County. I have voted in every election since I became eligible, up ballot, down ballot, and I'll continue. My area, my neighborhood is close to Forsyth Medical Center, the Haynes Mall area, and the Sam's and Costco retail warehouses. We also do not want our community split or connected with a total different district. Before the last election, Forsyth County was linked with Watauga County, which is 84 miles from me. Thankfully, we then got linked with Guilford, 23 miles away, where I attended UNCG. And that makes much more sense. Allow us, please, to stay in our own district. So I request no more gerrymandering from Republican or Democrats. No gerrymandering and no more voter restrictions. Don't we have enough already? I request more public education about redistricting. How did we have over 60 hearings the last time, and today I think it's about 14? That doesn't make any sense to me. I do not want packing, as other people have said, of districts, or protecting the addresses of current elected officials. We should have opportunity for competition. We should elect our representatives. There should not be favoritism. Finally, hearings and education should take place after the maps are drawn as well. In closing, I don't know whether you have children, but we always tell our kids, just play fair. You can do this process impartially if you'll just do it. Just play fair.
Thank you, ma'am. Lee Sudbrink, and following Ms. Sudbrink is Maria Mayorga.
Hello, my name is Lee Sudbrink, and I'm here representing myself. I have lived in Guilford County for 31 years, and I think you've heard a repetitive theme: fairness. Not slanted to one party or the other, a fair fight. My congressional district is an 18-plus Democrat district. Of course, the candidate put forth by the 18-plus party won. Never has the opposing party won against an 18-plus district. A candidate in such an imbalanced district has no motivation to reach out to the disadvantaged party citizens. The seat is simply and basically handed over to the favored candidate. That's not representative of the citizens. And this is not democracy at work. This is not looking out for all the views of all of the citizens in the district. And this is not a legitimate win for the 18-plus favored candidate. Plus, all this redistricting confuses the voters. I've been in District 6, 13, now I'm back in 6 again. Do right by the voters and make these districts competitive for all candidates, not just one party. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Sudbrink. Maria Mayorga. And following Ms. Mayorga is Ken Raymond.
Hello, my name is Maria Mayorga, and I am here as a resident of Jamestown, North Carolina. That city that is packed in between Guilford County, so we get to claim Guilford County, right? So I am here to highlight just what everyone has said, right? Fair and transparency, which is something we haven't seen of this committee of the NC General Assembly for the past year. As a Latina, right, like one of 3 in this room, right, I'm here to tell you that we want to see stop the segregation that happens in our neighborhoods, communities. You know, we can see this in our bus stops and the schools, right? We want this to stop in order to stop fulfilling your political agenda. According to the census in 2020, North Carolina saw an increase of the Latino community that looks like me, by 40%. In the same manner, all minorities increased. I have a chart here, which I can share later on. And communities of color, it's on my phone, yeah, increased by 20, 11, 3, and 6%. So we are tired of our community and our elected officials not being represented by people that look like us. We are tired of having individuals in power who don't look like us or have our interests at heart. So yes, we are those communities of interest that need to be represented, that need to be heard. Because you are talking that in your criteria you do not include race. Well, that hasn't been the example for North Carolina, because we know gerrymandering is about to happen again. So I ask that you allow the public to help you draw these maps, have a before and after meeting for us to review and edit these maps, and again, for Guilford County community to stay united and stop dividing the rural areas, as our Black and brown communities who need more resources and access to funding are limited because of the unjust lines that currently exist. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Mayorga. Next is Ken Raymond, and then following Mr. Raymond is Jim Saintsing.
My name is Ken Raymond. I've lived in Winston-Salem for over 30 years, and I'm chairman of the Forsyth County Republican Party. I'd like to thank the members of the redistricting committee for holding these statewide public hearings. It definitely helps with transparency, and considering all the questions regarding elections this year, transparency is certainly what we need. I'd also like to say regarding the final decision about North Carolina's congressional, state, House, and district lines, that they should be based on guidelines, standards, and ideals that bind us together and unite us as citizens, and not things that divide us, such as race or party affiliation. These things divide people in our state, and when decisions are made based on race or party affiliations, it does nothing but generate strife and bitterness among us. The last time the General Assembly went through the redistricting process, the following 10 years were marred with lawsuit after lawsuit after lawsuit. And all of these things were because of the lawsuits were based on divisive issues. One of the most important things that binds us and unites us as citizens of North Carolina is our state constitution and our state laws. As free citizens, black, white, Hispanic, Republican, or Democrat, the people of North Carolina approved of its state constitution. As free citizens, black, white, Hispanic, or Republican, or Democrat, the people of North Carolina elected a legislative body which passed the laws that we as citizens must follow. So therefore, the decision regarding our district lines should be based on the state constitution and our state laws. These things bind us, not race, party affiliations, or things like that. These things generate strife. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Raymond. Jim Saint Sing, and following Mr. Saint Sing is Tyler Beal.
My name's Jim Saint Sing. My wife and I have lived in Greensboro since 1985 and raised our family there. We've lived through many efforts to bind the cities of the Piedmont Triad and more closely to each other. And it hasn't always felt natural for them to be together. There are natural and historic rivalries and differences, but it is inevitable that they will grow more and more together as a natural, cohesive unit, a community, if you will. Among other many interests, they have common interests in replacing old industries with new ones and in educating their citizens to lead and work in the new and developing economy. We need a common voice in the U.S. House, and for that reason, I urge you to substantially retain the present map of the 6th District in the U.S. House. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Saint Sing. Tyler Beal, and following Mr. Beal is Steve Bird.
My name is Tyler Beal. I have a friend who struggled to get on Medicaid because she fell into what is politically known as the Medicaid gap, the same gap that my sister's mother and other family and friends still find themselves in today. Fortunately, my friend Canada Moyer passed away in 2019 because the NCGA still has not resolved this gap. To the current NCGA redistricting committee and larger NCGA body, you have already been called out for your shenanigans as it relates to gerrymandering and Common Cause v. Lewis. Surgical precision, that was their exact words. If you were able to find and be that particular last time, then please do not waste the time, money, and productivity of the 10.5 million people living in this great state. If you can't win a competitive, nonpartisan campaign on your own merits, then pull yourself up, work harder, and triumph. If not today, maybe tomorrow. Our communities are filled with pride and integrity, and robbing or limiting our right to vote for the sake of a political party is my definition of a politician. Stop being a politician and start being a public servant. A public servant looks after their community, pursues public, not personal or partisan interests. And a public servant doesn't let citizens across the state go without clean food, clean water, shelter, education, or health care. Being a politician means intrinsically holding on to power for the sake of holding power, while a public servant lifts others up in the communities so that in the end we all succeed. Every day is election day for you elected officials, and I hope that you will vote to be a public servant so as a community we can start voting politicians out. I urge you to avoid partisan gerrymandering so that we can fund our schools and implement statewide broadband, progressively fight climate change through an innovative overhaul of our economy, and finally close the Medicaid gap.
Thank you, Mr. Beal. Next is Steve Bird, and following Mr. Bird is Christopher Voren.
Hello, everybody. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. I'm Steve Bird, and I live in the South Side neighborhood in the southeast corner of downtown Greensboro. It's a traditional neighborhood layout, which allows the kids in the neighborhood to play outside in groups like decades past. We are diverse in both race and income in my neighborhood. When my daughter, now 15, was younger, we would joke that she was growing up on Sesame Street, since all the neighbors and shop owners knew her and the rest of the kids. My home is currently in the 6th Congressional District, represented by Kathy Manning. I was previously in the 13th Congressional District, represented by Ted Budd. As gerrymandered maps are continually struck down by state courts as illegal, we keep being resorted into different gerrymanders. Voters should be choosing our political representation. That's the whole point of self-governance. Instead, our political representatives are choosing their voters. In any given election cycle, no matter if I support or oppose my representative, and believe me, I've done both, the gerrymandered map means that I feel powerless as a voter. I've already been sorted into a district that has been calculated to vote in the aggregate in a certain way in order to maintain maximum partisan advantage by the map makers. Please restore some integrity to our elections. We demand compact districts which maintain the integrity of communities and do not provide for incumbent protection. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Bird. Christopher Voren, and following Mr. Voren will be Kathy Kirkpatrick.
Good afternoon. My name is Chris Voren. I currently reside in Iredell County. That's Mooresville, southwest corner. Full disclosure, I am the third vice chair of the Iredell County Democratic Party, but I am not here on their behalf, or nor by their request, only as a concerned citizen of North Carolina. So today, I would like to stress to the North Carolina General Assembly the importance of keeping regional interests, municipalities, and communities together when drawing the district maps for the next 10 years. Despite what our politically polarized climate may lead so many to believe, the interests of a community generally transcend far beyond the interest of the Democratic and Republican parties. That is to say, members of both parties within a community share so many mutual concerns. Government at all levels would serve the people of North Carolina better if the representatives prioritize the issues of their communities over the issues of their political party. For this reason, I implore the General Assembly to leave partisanship out of the redistricting process and instead consider drawing districts that keeps counties together, that keeps townships together, that keep rural communities together, and that keep geographical regions together. North Carolina is a richly diverse state with regions and communities that have equally diverse needs. For example, communities in the mountains need representatives that will protect the incredible natural resources of western North Carolina. WNC Republicans and Democrats will both agree on that. Central North Carolina needs a variety of representatives that will advocate for the needs of very urban, suburban, and rural communities. Please avoid slicing and dicing these communities up for political gain and instead focus on community gain. Finally, I'd like to add one natural consequence of creating regional and community-oriented districts, and that is shape compactness. This means that the shape of the district will be fairly simple, or that, well, to get technical, most straight lines drawn between two random points in a district will not cross through another district. So we've seen this before with our county maps, and that'll be it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Boren. Kathy Kirkpatrick is next, and following Ms. Kirkpatrick is Rhonda Mays.
Good afternoon. Thank you for listening to us, and I hope you're actually hearing us. I'm Kathy Kirkpatrick, chairman of the Democratic Party in Guilford County. I was a little perplexed that we don't have one of these hearings in Guilford County. First of all, we are one of the larger counties of a little under 550,000 people. But more than that, we were also part of the court ruling in prior lawsuits. I think this, frankly, is a lack of respect for voters in Guilford County, to be honest with you on that one. I'm also a little dismayed that the only hearings scheduled are those that are prior to the maps. We have yet to see what you guys are going to do with it. I encourage you to have a second round of hearings, one of which should be in Guilford County, after we see what you've done with the maps. I am not enamored with the process that we've had before, and this is a little confused about why people are confused about the lawsuits because you guys aren't being fair. So we need to make sure that that's happening. Additionally, I want to make sure that when you're doing this, you're not packing or stacking black voters and brown voters. This dilutes their voices in other districts, and it has been ruled unconstitutional by the Roberts Supreme Court. So I have 2 questions for your consideration. 1, what steps are you taking to ensure that you're not packing more black and brown voters than necessary into districts to elect candidates of their choice? And number 2, how does the committee leadership intend to ensure compliance with the Voting Rights Act if you are not going to look at race at any point in the process? You're doing this under the guise of fairness and equity, but really you know where black and brown voters live. This is a bit disingenuous. So you want the lawsuits to stop? Then let's draw fair, equitable, and sensible districts and maps. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Kirkpatrick. Rhonda Mays, and following Ms. Mays is Chelsea Griffith.
Good evening. I'm Rhonda Mays, and I'm standing as an individual. Thank you for this opportunity, and thank you for being here this evening. I want to make certain that when you're looking at the districts, you're looking to make sure that the representatives are, A, representing the people, first and foremost. B, making certain that when you're drawing these lines, that you're looking at a number of things. I know you say you're not going to look at race. You say you're not going to look at political party. But we need to look at what resources are in the various districts, the schools that are in those districts. So therefore, we're not continuing to pack a bunch of schools and communities who do not have resources all in one area, and the representatives are working like heck to try to get resources in those communities, but they don't have an opportunity to get anything in those communities because they don't have bargaining chips as those who have other resources in their districts. So please look at what is available in the various communities and don't put all the resources in just particular districts. We need equality. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Griffith. Ms. Mays, I'm sorry. Next is Chelsea Griffith.
Hi, my name is Chelsea Griffith, and I'm not representing any group. I'm representing myself as a concerned citizen. In looking at the information that was presented, I had a concern concerning the use of the census data, considering that we have had this the pandemic is in existence. And in some of the neighborhoods, there was no census person that was actually going out to talk to people to get their information. So some of these areas are underrepresented, in particularly elderly people that may not be it or didn't understand or was not able to actually complete the census. Also, my other concern is that you will not be packing and cracking the districts and the neighborhoods. That is my hope and my concern that you do not do that, so that we, as it was stated, that we will not be back again with lawsuits. I'd like to state that as an African American or Black person, that we are not a monolith. We are informed voters. We do pay attention, and we will be paying attention to what will be done and said. And we will come back and vote. And if you do not represent us as we send you to represent us, then the option is to vote you out.
Thank you, Ms. Griffith. Constance Caldwell is next, and following Ms. Caldwell is Michael Sullivan.
Good afternoon, everybody and panels. I know you have heard a lot about fairness and gerrymanders, but I stand here as an educator, as a teacher. I'm picking back on what one person just said about schooling. I do too wanted to say, what were y'all going to do when impacting schools? So as example, Carver versus Carter versus Walkertown. What are you going to do? Are you sending less kids to one side more kids to the other side. So how are you going to fix that? Is that the same thing what's going on with transportation? Buses are not working. So I need to know, are you going to overcrowd the school? How are you going to fix it? How are you going to make it better? At zoning, you know, we're talking about zone. Why is one side of the zone of the school, there is more funding for one side than it is on the other side? I think fairness should be when it comes to our schooling. Our kids are so important. It's not about race. It's all about fairness. So we look at our kids. All kids should be equal and be treated fair. And they all want to learn, no matter what side of the road they're on, what side of the track they're on. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Caldwell. Michael Sullivan. Michael Sullivan. Anthony Spearman is next, and following Mr. Spearman is Dr. Kiana Gardnick.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I am T. Anthony Spearman, resident of Greensboro, North Carolina, president of the North Carolina NAACP. I have attended 2 meetings at the Legislative Office Building in Raleigh, and am extremely concerned with how the devil keeps showing up in the details. His first showing is in the composition of the committee itself. On the House side, 12 Republicans and 7 Democrats. And on the Senate side, 10 Republicans and 6 Democrats. A total of 22 Republicans and 13 Democrats. With that alone, the gerrymandering has already begun. Can someone tell me why, if indeed, as the chair, Representative Destin Hall, stated on August 12, 2021, that, and I quote, "Today's committee meeting is notable and historic because for the first time ever without a court order, but with doing it voluntarily, the chairs have put forth a set of criteria before you, voluntarily not using election data and partisanship. And as far as the chair can tell, that is the first time that that has happened in the history of this state, and perhaps the first time that it's happened in this country. To all that I can say, I hope so. But deem it prudent to remind you that the Roberts Supreme Court ruled almost unanimously that it is unconstitutional to pack black voters into a smaller number of districts in order to dilute their influence in other districts, when a smaller percentage of that minority is capable of electing a candidate of their choice. How does committee leadership intend to ensure compliance with the Voting Rights Act if they're not going to look at race at any point in the process? In U.S. Congressional District 6, there's been an increase among black voting age population of 25,609 voters. It's real simple. Draw maps that allow voters to choose who their representatives will be, and not maps that will allow legislators to pick who they want to represent them in elections.
Spearman. Thank you very much. Dr. Kiani Gardner and Fleming Elamine.
Good afternoon. Thank you all for this opportunity. My name is Dr. Kiani Gardner. I am here to speak on behalf particularly of colleges and universities in North Carolina. My love and passion for higher education in this state runs deep. I did my PhD in cell biology from Duke, became a research fellow at Duke. I'm a former professor at 3 different institutions of higher learning here in North Carolina, including Guilford Technical Community College, right up the road. And I'm here actually on behalf of Campus Vote Project, where I am the statewide coordinator in this national, nonprofit, nonpartisan project that aims to increase student engagement and access to the ballot and lifelong civic engagement as members of our community. I'm here very specifically to ask you to consider all of our colleges and universities in this state as communities of interest. We all know and have seen in the past that North Carolina has a history of dividing up our college campuses from UNC Asheville to NCA&T. And I'm here to make the argument that students are not temporary residents of their colleges, as has been made before. The decision of a student to join an institution of higher education
is based on economics, opportunity, environment. It's as holistic a decision as where any adult chooses to live their life. We can all agree that one of the great strengths of our state is our ability to produce and attract highly educated, highly competent members of the workforce. And we see that now as we bring in top-level employers. When we dilute out the power of our students by gerrymandering their campuses, we dilute their ability to impact policies that will ultimately retain highly educated individuals in our community and will ultimately decrease the economic viability of our state as a whole. When considering communities of interest, I implore you, treat our colleges and universities as important hubs of innovation and economic development, because that's exactly what they are. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Gardner. Fleming Elamine, and then he will be followed by James Douglas.
Good afternoon. I'm speaking as Fleming Elamine, citizen, not county commissioner, but welcome to Forsyth County. I'm going to say two things that I'm requesting of you. First, the chairman is my senator down in the General Assembly, so welcome, Senator Joyce. It's good to say things 3 times. I'm asking for transparency. I'm asking for transparency. I'm asking for transparency. And I'll tell you very simply why. If you are born in a democracy, your birthright is transparency in any government process. That's a birthright. If it's not done, you have lawsuits. You have discontent. You have protests. So transparency in government decisions is your birthright in a democracy. Number 2, let's be fair. Now, I hope that you would lean more on the Common Sense book written by Thomas Paine than the Prince written by Machiavelli. And those of us involved in politics know the difference between the two. And finally, I've been around long enough to know when Steve Neal was our congressman, and I worked for his campaign. Virginia Fox, Congress lady. I've seen Linda Garu as my senator, Earlene Palmer as my senator, and I thought Senator Paul would be my senator, but that didn't work out because of redistricting. And I've seen my county divided up substantially with a little hole in the center. I'm in the 10th district. Let me say that again. I was born and raised here, but I'm in the 10th district. So we have the 10th district and the 6th district, and it is a little confusing for a lot of citizens. So let's unite the county. Let's have one voice of reason and common sense, and let's be fair, and by all means, let's be transparent. Thank you for your time, and thank you for being in the best county in North Carolina.
Thank you, Mr. Elamine. James Douglas, and he will be followed by Don Chiariello.
Hello. Welcome, Guilford, a lot of you here. That's awesome. I'm here as a constituent and a long-time resident of this area. I know who's ultimately in charge of this committee, and I'll try not to pretend to know what the outcome's going to be. Personally, I'd like this process to be nonpartisan, chosen by an unbiased party. But as Senator Krawick and Mr. Eustach said earlier, that is not legally possible. So I'd like to appeal to the better angels of your natures. I know this country is divided today. The primary reason you're here is to represent the populace, not your party. I know that's hard. I know that some of you have no interest in that. Still, I'm asking you to do what's right. Shape districts into areas not bound by race, tax value, and instead focus on a diverse group of people who all work, live, and vote in the same reasonably divided area. Show us that you are for the people you were elected to represent. Not yourselves. Not because your dreams of re-election might be at risk. You're here for us. You need to be reminded of that. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Douglas. Don Chiariello, and he will be followed by Kevin Farmer.
Thank you. My name's Don Chiarello. I'm from High Point, and I'm speaking on behalf of the High Point NAACP. In a democracy, the voters select their representatives. But that's not what we have in North Carolina. At least that's not what we've had in the past. What we have had is the elected officials picking which voters they want to support them. It's not democracy. It's a shame. Now, the North Carolina General Assembly has proven that it is incapable of fairly, honestly, and transparently redistricting. So my request to you is to consider strongly having an independent group do the redistricting. And by that I mean maybe the League of Women Voters, Democracy North Carolina, or some other nonpartisan group. Democracy North Carolina is a nonpartisan group. It's a small d, not a capital D. If we don't do that, the citizens of this state will never have confidence in what you're doing because you've screwed it up every time in the last 100 years. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chiarelli. Kevin Farmer, and he will be followed by Tawana Roebuck.
Members of the committee and fellow citizens, my name is Kevin Farmer. I am here representing the Forsyth County Democratic Party. I am the chairman of the Forsyth County Democratic Party, and I am a citizen of Clemens, North Carolina. I read in some of our talking points that we're supposed to be polite and thank the General Assembly for its work, so my remarks will be brief. Since we don't have any maps on which to comment, which seems strange for a hearing on redistricting, I can only speculate as to future intent. I imagine whatever maps you do concoct will be carefully crafted to convey an air of impartiality while retaining an advantage for the Republican Party. Kind of like this hearing, which has been carefully crafted to convey the sense that public participation is welcome, but which was cobbled together at the last minute and convened without a virtual option. So to the General Assembly, I say thank you, but no thank you. Go on and do what you're going to do, because I'm sure that's the plan regardless of whatever comments we make here today. Just be assured of the following. We're organizing, we're gaining traction in areas that have always been considered safe Republican districts. We're more than ready for whatever shenanigans the General Assembly concocts during this process. See you in 2022.
Thank you, Mr. Farmer. Next is Tawana Roebuck, and she will be followed by Darrell Kicker.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon. I am Tawana Wellman Roebuck. I'm the director of an agency called ESR. Many of the people know us as Experiment in Self-Reliance. Today I'm here speaking on behalf of our organization, but I also want to draw to your attention something called the Community Action Agency. ESR is the Community Action Agency here in Forsyth County. And why is that important? That is important because we bring together a variety of people for services. The average age client that we serve is 26. As I looked in this audience today, there are very few people that are 26 years old or younger. And so therein lies my comments. I'm a former elementary school teacher. And so one of the points I want you to remember is education. Our 26-year-olds are our future voters. They're our new leaders. And so I want to engage you and ask you, all of you represent counties where there is a community action agency. If you think about diversity, equity, and inclusion, you would think about a variety of people, as well as a variety of ages, as well as a variety of race. I invite you to check out your community action agency in your community. If you're unaware of the community action agency in your community, give me a call. Most people know ESR. I invite you to have additional meetings. And you might think, where should we have those meetings? I'm so glad you asked. I want to invite you to have those meetings at a community action agency. Here in Winston-Salem, we are located in a low-wealth neighborhood right off of Akron Drive. So there are many community action agencies across our state that you can invite residents to come and be a part of your conversation. Where we have education, we have informed voters, as well as we have informed residents. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Roebuck. Darrell Kicker, and Mr. Kicker will be followed by Elder Timbila Covington.
Thank you. My name is Darrell Kicker, and I'm from Greensboro. And you know, gerrymandering is just so wrong. It's wrong when Democrats do it. It's wrong when Republicans do it. And when our districts are gerrymandered, this whole argument that you're held accountable by the people becomes a sham, because we're not picking you, you're picking us. You know, when North Carolina is a very evenly divided state, we all know, but I don't think that's represented in the way that our districts are drawn right now. So my question to you is, if North Carolina, being the way that it is right now, had 8 congressional representatives and just 5 Republicans in Washington, and if our state Senate was made up of 28 Democrats and 22 Republicans, and if the House had 69 Democrats and 51 Republicans, would you all agree that that's representative of North Carolina? And if the answer is no, and I think that's what all of your answer would be, then you know that we've got a problem. Something's wrong. So please do the right thing. Please be fair. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Kicker. Elder Timbila Covington will be followed by Kathleen Ruin Williams.
Good afternoon. My name is Timbila Covington, and I am the president of the Ministers' Conference of Winston-Salem and vicinity, and a Forsyth County resident. The Ministers' Conference is an ecumenical group of faith leaders, and we are deeply concerned of all of the issues our communities face. We work together in trying to address as many of these issues as being a voice to the voiceless, a hub for information dissemination, and a voice in addressing the issues of our communities. But we cannot be a voice to all for all of the issues in concern. And so for this, we demand of you, our elected officials, full transparency, fairness in public input, including virtual input. Basically, we need additional rounds of public hearings, and these hearings should be held throughout the entire state after the maps are drafted to give citizens a chance to give informed input of those maps. We call on you not to split precincts, municipalities, and districts. And most of all, we do not want you to delude the vote of African American voters by packing voters in our representatives of choice in all one district. If you don't know, we know this well and understand this to be gerrymandering. Thank you.
Thank you. Sathya Williams, I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing that anywhere close. Is there Sathya Williams with Carolina? I'm not sure. Do we have a Williams here that signed up to speak? Okay. Melinda Hash is next, and Melinda will be followed by Maya McCoy.
Good afternoon or evening, and you won't have to use those cards on me. I'm going to be very, very short. Thank you so much for allowing me the opportunity to speak. But one of the things I want to say, something that I heard, and that was, he who controls the conversation and the language controls the community. And I just want to just say to you all to allow all of the voices to be able to be heard. Allow all of the voices to be able to come to the table, so that as you bring the conversations, that you bring the conversations of all. Increase your number of meetings so that all of the voices can be heard. I live in this community in Winston-Salem, Forsyth County. I am a mother. I am a worker at a community action agency. I'm also a member of the Ministers' Conference of Winston-Salem and vicinity. And I just ask again, and I implore you to allow all of the voices to be heard, because he who controls the conversation and the language controls the community. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Hash. Maya McCoy is next, and following Ms. McCoy is Jake Gellergood.
Good evening. My name is Minister Maya McCoy. I am a native daughter of Winston-Salem. I am here standing in the shoes of my ancestors and the ones that have come before me. 100 years ago, I would not have had the opportunity to be in this very room or even had the right to vote. I stand at the intersections of being Black, a woman, and differently able. Many of those before me were beaten, jailed, killed for the right to vote, and we are living the regression here in 2021. So often those that are marginalized are voiceless and are so often pushed farther to the margin. 2 years ago, district lines were drawn again. The blatant gerrymandering inequalities were so segregated, the Supreme Court itself defied that it was unconstitutional. Race has everything to do while we are having this issue today. We cannot ignore the politics of race, socioeconomics, as well as privilege. This is the very foundation of America. The infant mortality rate in a predominantly Black and brown community here in Winston-Salem is the highest in North Carolina. Food injustice, education inequities, health disparities, and the income wage gap has all continued to exacerbate the very communities that are our neighbors. Who are your neighbors? Those who come into contact with you each and every day. Social justice is God's justice. When one hurt, we all hurt. Thank you.
Thank you. Jake Gellergood. And following Mr. Gellergood will be Darlene Garrett.
Thank you. My name is Jake Ellergood, and I'm from here in Winston-Salem. And let me say, first off, I've learned my lesson. There are so many great speakers. Next time I want to sign up, 10 years from now, sign up online first, so I don't have to go this late and follow so many great speakers. But I am glad to get a chance to talk to you all today. And the reason that compels me to be here, I don't have any great written testimony to read to you. I just wanted to say that I spent a number of years working at a university here in the Triad. I worked with first-generation college students as a staffer, and I've seen some of the barriers that get put in front of students, especially around voting. And my question is, why put one more barrier in front of students in voting? Let's help our new voters vote. Let's make it accessible as possible. Let's make sure we don't split college campuses. Don't split NCA and T. It's been done before. It shouldn't be done again. And please think of all of the college campuses across the state, and please don't split those campuses either. I know it's hard to tell sometimes what is a community. It's an ambiguous question. It's hard to know exactly what a community is. But when I look at a college campus, I recognize community when I see it. That is a community. Please don't split these campuses. Let's make voting accessible for everyone, especially our newest voters. Thank you.
Thank you. Darlene Garrett, and she will be followed by Lee Haywood.
Good evening. Thanks for being here and allowing us this opportunity to address you. I am a resident of Guilford County over half of my life, and I'm a retired 20-year veteran of the school board and the proud mother of Senator Garrett. I agree with so many people here about gerrymandering. It was wrong when the Democrats did it, and it's wrong now. So I urge you, please, to be fair in drawing maps. Everyone's been talking about how important fairness is, and I think it really is. Also, please, this isn't about the maps, but it's very important that we not pass laws trying to suppress the vote. We want everyone to be able to vote, all colors, all so please don't do that like other states have. And and then like the young man from Guilford County, Tyler Beal, said, please, please pass Medicaid expansion. We have so many people who need it desperately. And it'll actually bring money into our state, which is a great thing. And hopefully you can spend it on schools. And then finally, just please have more forums after you complete the maps. And again, I know it's a difficult job, but as my parents taught me to do the golden rule as I was growing up, please, please, those of you that are in power, remember what you do unto others as you would have others do unto you. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Garrett. Lee Haywood will be followed by Kara Hammond Larrabee.
Good evening, everyone. I want to thank y'all up there on the dais for what you do each and every day. And I want to thank you for allowing me to stand before you and speak. I want to address a couple of the comments before I get started about gerrymandering. I'm a long-time resident of Guilford County, and I remember a time when the other side of the aisle, I'm a Republican, drew the districts, and Guilford County was split between 3 different districts, one of which ran right up I-85, another one which ran from the eastern side of Guilford County all the way to Raleigh. Was that fair? I would posit to you that when the Republicans took over back in 2010, the process of the redistricting process was more transparent than the Democrats ever gave it. So I want you to consider that. It's true. It's true. I just want to express concern about the way the 6th District was drawn. Forsyth deserves to be in its own entity. I love my peeps in Forsyth, but I know that they want to be by themselves and they don't want to, they've never been split up before. There's a way to draw a district which includes Guilford and some of the surrounding counties without dividing Forsyth in half. I think it's the wrong thing that y'all did, and I hope that y'all will fix that mistake. Any nonpartisan commission is going to be partisan. We know this. It all depends on what kind of data is used and what kind of criteria is used. Whoever controls the legislature controls the process. I'm much more comfortable with the Republicans doing the process than the Democrats ever gave it time for over 140 years. It's crazy to have the 6th District, which is a D18, and having the District 13 surrounding it an R1000. So please change the mistake. Thank y'all very much.
Thank you, sir. Kara Hammond Larrabee.
Good evening. My name is Kara Hammond Larrabee. I reside in Pofftown, North Carolina, which is pretty rural, but I grew up in Winston-Salem. And I'd like to say, as a taxpayer, after a lot of the comments that I've heard this evening, I feel a need to say that if we want to avoid costly litigation in the future, let's take the time to do the right thing. Naturally, when all people have left is the court system, instead of a responsive representation, you get lawsuits. In an increasingly worrisome world, it becomes increasingly important to work for the common good, not payback for perceived wrongs. Draw districts that make sense to constituents by keeping communities together. Constituents should choose their reps, not the other way around. And it is critical to make sure the process is transparent with ample time for public response. Show us all the maps before enacting them. Thank you.
Those are all of the folks on our list who signed up. Is there anyone else that we missed or anyone else that would? James Knox? Oh, it was not on our list, but we welcome to hear your comments.
Hello, James Knox. I live up in Will Hall, Winston-Salem. But anyway, what I'd like to say is a lot of people have been talking about the way the state is. When you don't include the unaffiliated, there are 53 counties in North Carolina with more Republicans than Democrats. I follow that, so I know. And you can go to the state website and look Saturday morning, they have the list. But I think Forsyth County deserves to have its own representation. We haven't had representation in Winston-Salem, Forsyth County since Richard Burr. And I think we should have our own thing. Also, when you look at you wanting to put everything together, they only have a certain number they have to divide by. So everybody's not going to get put in the same area at the same time. I mean, Guilford County is too big to have one state Senate district or one state House. It's not going to happen. Forsyth County's too big. So there are going to be some splits. You got to split it somewhere. I don't mind sharing with Surrey County. I live on the northern end of Forsyth. I don't mind sharing with Surrey and Stokes County. I have no problem with that. But I'll say this, those that think compact means you get compact, everybody can't be compact. Somebody's got to give up something. The western part of North Carolina, the beach part of North Carolina is heavily Republican, and other than Buncombe County, you got to go to Mecklenburg before you hit a Democrat majority county. So you can't draw a districts without gerrymandering that would be Democrat, state House, or state Senate. Thank y'all.
Thank you, sir. Is there anyone else who would like to speak that we missed? Joan Fleming, you are recognized.
Hi, my name is Joan. My name is Joan Fleming, and I'm from Davie County. Let's talk about nonpartisan. What is nonpartisan? No one is nonpartisan. An unaffiliated voter registers nonpartisan, so we don't call him on the telephone and bug him, okay? Check his voting record. He is not nonpartisan. The districts should be drawn by the NCGA. They were elected for a reason. For 140 years, they drew the districts. It was fine when the Democrats drew it. You've heard that. It was fine. Everything was fair and balanced then. Why is it not fair and balanced now? They are drawn by the census every 10 years. Okay, why are we doing them every 2 years? And we're having lawsuits after lawsuits. It cost us $7 million. Today I've heard millions. No, it's $7 million. I read it this morning before I came here. So not everybody in this room is going to be happy. Someone's going to have to give up something. And I think we elected the General Assembly, let them do it. If it was good enough for the goose, it's good enough for the gander.
Thank you. Anyone else that would like to speak? Having exhausted our agenda, we want to thank you all so much for coming. We appreciate your input, and please check with the website regularly to keep updates on what's happening, and we appreciate all of you being here. I knew this county would turn out. I think there were only a few at the last meeting in 15, and now we had all of you. So thank you so much for coming out and giving us your input. We appreciate it very much. Meeting is adjourned.